So this is a quick primer on the doctrine of gift in the realm of property law. We're just going to go over very briefly what it is, the types of gifts, elements, and the elements in a little bit more detail. So what is a gift? A gift is a voluntary transfer of property, in this case personal property, without consideration, with no consideration. A crudely drawn stick figure would help illustrate this better. Here we have Alan and JY, and Alan's going to give JY a gift. First, these aren't elements, this is just part of the definition, right? The gift has to be voluntary. So voluntariness means can't have a gun pointed to your head. Second, this has to be property. This can't be land. Different rules apply to real property. And it can't be an exchange. It can't be a quid pro quo. A gift just goes in one direction. There cannot be something that the gift giver receives in return. Assuming all of these criteria are met, a happy JY and a happy Alan, because it's the giving that counts, or whatever the saying is. Recall that there are two bigger structural things about gifts that we need to talk about. One is that there are two types of gifts, inter vivos and causa mortis. Second, that there are three elements of a gift that you have to fulfill. And of course, this is what you want to focus on, but you do want to look for the different types of gifts when you're doing your issue spotting. So let's look at the two types of gifts. The two types of gifts are inter vivos, a transfer that takes place while you're alive. The main thing about an inter vivos transaction is that once it takes place, once you've delivered your present into the other person's hands, it is irrevocable. By contrast, a gift causa mortis, in contemplation of imminent death, something like a sheriff is about to die after being shot in a stupid gunfight, and he says, "Here, Tex, take my 6-shooter. They weren't real much use to me." Worst cowboy ever, right? This gift is revoked if the person giving it recovers from this imminent death. Now that we've covered the two types of gifts, let's go back to the three elements of a gift. The three elements of a gift are intent, delivery, and acceptance. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each one. Intent is a funny thing. Most mental elements are kind of funny in that you can, of course, never really be sure what's going on in somebody's head. Normally, intent is actually expressed. The fact of delivery usually is an expression of intent. Now, of course, I suppose it is possible that you will have evidence apart from the delivery itself that will express intent. Someone does an email, said, "I meant that." Sometimes there are disputes between the Alan and the JY over whether or not something is a gift. And of course, if you ask Alan directly, if you put him on the stand, he'll say, "I didn't mean that as a gift." But that would not be dispositive in determining intent. If he actually places that into JY's hands and at the time said enjoy, that will usually trump whatever he says as a later point. So let's come to delivery. This is usually the tricky thing about a gift. There are actually 4 types of valid delivery. One of them is a bit older and not as used. So here are the 4. Actual delivery, constructive delivery, symbolic delivery, and a deed in writing. Delivery by deed in writing. This is somewhat antiquated. So let me go over each of those. Actual is pretty easy. It's kind of what you would expect. It's just this. Once it's in JY's hands, JY's been eaten by a transparent, badly drawn box. This is an actual delivery. A constructive delivery is one where physical delivery, actually placing the object into the gift recipient's hands, is difficult or impossible, so you end up handing over something that gives you access to that thing. Here's an example. Let's say Alan is going to give something to JY. In the box is a key, perhaps to a car, maybe to a safety deposit box, maybe to a big piece of furniture locked away in storage. So that's constructive delivery. So symbolic is more like when something is impossible to transfer. But normally symbolic involves handing over something in writing that says, I give this to you. That normally is sufficient for symbolic transfer because you're not handing over the thing, but you are handing over a writing saying, I'm going to give this to you. Here's an example. Alan's going to give JY the copyright to a book he wrote called, and so this is the copyright to Alan's handy guide called How to Survive New Delhi. He can't actually place the copyright into JY's hand, so what he's done is he's drafted a document and all it says is, this is Alan, I'm going to give the copyright to my friend JY. So that's a symbolic transfer. So the fourth kind is a deed in writing where you actually hand over a sealed written instrument that grants ownership of an object over to another person. This isn't used as much anymore because the symbolic will do, and largely because under common law, the distinction between a sealed instrument and an unsealed one has kind of broken down. Now, in the modern day, a sealed instrument is one that's signed by a notary public or has a wax seal, but nobody really does that anymore, so they don't really bother. So those are the four types of delivery. There's a little bit more to be said about delivery, and I think I say a bit more about it in the description of the elements in another unit within 7-Sage LSP. The main one is transfer between agents of the gift giver and the gift recipient, but no need for the basic primer here. So that's delivery. Let's go to the last element, which is relatively easy. It is acceptance. This is a relatively easy element, and on an exam, you can write this because if you've got intent and delivery, you normally automatically have acceptance. That is, there's a presumption of acceptance once a gift has been delivered into the hands of the gift recipient. Now, that presumption can be overcome by an affirmative rejection by gift recipient. So, to be clear, once Alan puts the present into JY's hands, this is deemed to be accepted, unless JY throws the gift back at Alan and says, I don't want it. Then that presumption has been overcome. So that's basically it on the basics of personal property.